Her knees hit the frozen ground first, then her hands. Then the smallest child slipped from her arms and landed in the snow with a cry that barely made a sound. "Please." The word came out broken, shattered. "Please, mister. I ain't asking for myself. Just my children. 7 of them. They ain't eaten in 4 days. I'll do anything. Work myself to death. Just, please, feed my babies." Caleb Morrison had sworn he'd never let another soul into his life. But those words, and those 7 pairs of hollow eyes staring up at him, were about to change everything. Before we continue this story, if you're enjoying it, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's get back to that frozen trail in Montana, 1878. The woman's body gave out 3 feet from his horse's hooves. Caleb Morrison pulled hard on the reins, his mare whinnying in protest as she skidded to a stop on the icy trail. His hand went to his rifle on instinct. Years of war, making him ready for ambush, for tricks, for the kind of cruelty men did to each other. But this wasn't an ambush. This was a woman, face down in the snow. And behind her, clustered together like frightened rabbits, stood 7 children. 7. Caleb counted them twice because his mind refused to accept what his eyes were telling him. The oldest couldn't be more than 12. The youngest, Lord, have mercy. The youngest was being carried by a girl who looked barely old enough to carry herself. "Mama!" The oldest boy ran forward, dropping to his knees beside the fallen woman. "Mama, get up. Please get up." The woman stirred, pushed herself onto her elbows. Her face was gray, her lips cracked and bleeding, her eyes sunken so deep they looked like bruises. "I'm fine, Ezra." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm fine. Just need a minute." She wasn't fine. Any fool could see that. Caleb should have ridden on, should have pointed toward town, and told them it was only 10 miles east. Should have done what he'd been doing for the past 6 years, kept his head down, minded his own business, and let the world sort out its own misery. But then the woman looked up at him, and he saw it. That look. The one he'd seen in the eyes of dying soldiers on battlefields. The one that said, "I know I'm done for, but I'm not going down without a fight." "Please." She forced herself to her knees, swaying like a reed in the wind. "Please, mister. I ain't asking for myself." "Ma'am. Just my children." She grabbed his stirrup with hands that were more bone than flesh. 7 of them. They ain't eaten in 4 days. I got nothing to pay you with. Nothing but my labor. I'll work myself to death if that's what it takes. Just, please." Her voice cracked. "Feed my babies." The smallest girl, couldn't be more than 2, started crying. Not loud wailing, but that weak, exhausted whimper that came when a child had been hungry so long they didn't have the strength left for real tears. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Walk away. This ain't your problem. You got enough ghosts already." "What's your name?" The words came out before he could stop them. "Whitfield." The woman's grip on his stirrup loosened as hope flickered in her eyes. "Rose Whitfield. These are my children. Ezra, he's 12. Then there's Martha, she's 10. Samuel's 8. The twins Daniel and David, they're 6. Little Sarah's 4. And the baby, that's Hope. She just turned 2 last month." She recited their names like a prayer, like they were the only things she had left to hold on to. "Where's your husband?" Something dark passed across Rose's face. "Dead. 3 months back. Mining accident." Caleb studied her, the hesitation in her voice, the way her eyes dropped when she said it. She was lying about something, but he couldn't figure out what. Not that it mattered. Whatever her story was, it didn't change the 7 children standing in the snow, shaking like leaves. "How far you walked?" 4 days, maybe 5. I lost count." Rose tried to stand and failed. The oldest boy, Ezra, caught her before she hit the ground again. "There was supposed to be a town. They said there was a town west of the mountains, but we couldn't find it. And then the snow came and..." She trailed off. Didn't need to finish. Caleb looked at the children again. Really looked at them this time. Their clothes were rags. Thin cotton dresses and patched trousers that might have been adequate in summer but were death sentences in a Montana winter. Their faces were hollow, their eyes too big, their lips blue from cold. The two middle boys, the twins, were huddled so close together they looked like one person. And the baby. The one called Hope. She'd stopped crying, stopped moving. Her tiny body hung limp in her sister's arms. And for one terrible moment, Caleb thought she was dead. Then she coughed, a weak rattling sound that came from deep in her chest. Fever. That baby's got a fever. Your youngest is sick. Rose's head snapped up. What? No, Hope's fine. She's just tired. She looked at her daughter, really looked, and what little color remained in her face drained away. Oh God, no! Hope, baby girl, wake up! Please wake up! She crawled across the frozen ground to the girl holding the baby. Her movements were desperate, clumsy, her body too weak to do what her heart demanded. Give her to me, Sarah. Give Mama the baby. The 4-year-old obeyed, her own face crumpling as she watched her mother take the limp toddler into her arms. She was fine this morning. Rose's voice was rising now, panic bleeding through. She was crying for food like the others. She was fine. How long since she ate last? Rose looked up at Caleb, tears freezing on her cheeks. Same as the rest. 4 days. I tried to find berries, tried to catch a rabbit. But the snow covered everything and I don't have a gun and 4 days without food for a child that age. Caleb swung down from his horse. Her body's using everything it's got just to stay warm. Nothing left to fight off sickness. He moved toward them, and the children scattered like startled birds. All except Ezra, who stepped in front of his mother with his fists raised, putting himself between his family and the stranger. Don't you touch her. The boy's voice shook, but he held his ground. 12 years old, and ready to fight a grown man twice his size. Ready to die protecting his mother and siblings. Caleb felt something crack inside his chest. Something he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten it existed. Easy, son. He held up his hands, showing they were empty. I ain't gonna hurt your mama. I ain't gonna hurt any of you. That's what the last man said. Ezra's eyes were hard. Too hard for a boy his age. Right before he tried to take Martha. Caleb went still. Tried to take Martha. The 10-year-old girl shrank back, hiding behind her younger brothers. Her eyes were fixed on the ground, her arms wrapped around herself in a gesture that told Caleb everything he needed to know about what tried to take meant. Ezra. Rose's voice cut through the tension. Ezra, it's all right. Put your hands down. But Mama, I said put them down. Her tone left no room for argument. This man hasn't done anything to us. He stopped. He's listening. That's more than anyone else has done in 3 months. Slowly, reluctantly, Ezra lowered his fists. But he didn't step aside. Didn't stop watching Caleb with those 2 old eyes. Smart boy, Caleb said quietly. Protecting your family like that. Your daddy would be proud. Something flickered across Ezra's face. Pain, maybe. Or anger. Hard to tell. My daddy wasn't the protecting kind, the boy said flatly. Rose flinched like she'd been slapped. So that's how it is. Caleb had seen enough abused women during the war. Seen what happened when a man used his fists on a wife who couldn't fight back. Seen the way children learned to flinch at loud noises and sudden movements. These children had learned those lessons too, every single one of them. My ranch is about an hour west of here. Caleb kept his voice calm, level, non-threatening. Got a barn that's warmer than this trail. Got food in the pantry. Ain't much, but it's enough to fill some bellies. Rose's eyes went wide. Why would you? Because that baby in your arms is going to die if she don't get warm and fed in the next few hours. Caleb cut her off, his voice harsh. And because I buried my own daughter 6 years ago, and I'll be damned if I stand here and watch another child slip away when I could have done something about it." Silence fell over the trail. The wind howled through the trees, driving snow into their faces. But no one moved. No one spoke. Then Martha, the 10-year-old who'd been trying to make herself invisible, stepped forward. "You had a daughter." Her voice was small, tentative, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to speak. "I did." Caleb's throat tightened. "Her name was Emma. She was born while I was away fighting in the war. Died before I ever got to hold her. Her mama too." "That's sad." "Yeah." Caleb had to look away for a moment. "Yeah, it is." Martha studied him with eyes that were far too knowing for a child of 10. Eyes that had seen things no child should see. Then she turned to her mother. "Mama, I think we should go with him." Rose looked startled. "Martha." "He's telling the truth. About his daughter." Martha's voice was steady now, certain. "I can tell. He's got the same eyes you do, the hurting kind." Caleb felt something shift in his chest. This child, this girl who'd been through God knows what, she could still see the good in people, could still trust her instincts. That took courage, more courage than most adults had. "Please, Mama." The twins spoke in unison, their voices weak and trembling. "We're so hungry." "I'm cold." Little Sarah was crying now, fat tears rolling down her cheeks. "I want to be warm. Please, Mama, I want to be warm." Rose looked at her children, all 7 of them begging her with their eyes to say yes, to trust this stranger, to take a chance on someone who might hurt them or might save them. It was an impossible choice. But then Hope coughed again, that terrible rattling sound, and Rose's face crumpled. "All right." Her voice broke on the words. "All right. We'll go with you. But I swear, mister, if you try anything, I won't. If you lay one hand on my children, I won't. I've got nothing left to lose." Rose's eyes met his, and Caleb saw the fierce, desperate love of a mother who would kill to protect her young. "Nothing except them, and I will tear you apart with my bare hands if you hurt them. Do you understand me?" "Yes, ma'am." Caleb held her gaze. "I understand. And I give you my word as a soldier, as a Christian, and as a man who's got nothing left to lose either, I will not harm you or your children." For a long moment, Rose just stared at him, searching his face for lies, for hidden cruelty, for the violence she'd learned to expect from men. Whatever she saw, there must have been enough, because she nodded once. "Then help me up." Caleb extended his hand. Rose took it. Getting 9 people on one horse wasn't possible, so Caleb ended up walking, leading his mare, while Rose rode with Hope cradled against her chest. The other children trudged alongside him, their steps slow and stumbling. He'd given his coat to the twins, his hat to little Sarah, his gloves to Ezra, who'd refused at first until Caleb pointed out that frost-bitten fingers couldn't hold a rifle to protect his family. That had convinced him. How much farther? Samuel, the 8-year-old, was lagging behind. His lips were blue, and he'd stopped shivering, a bad sign. "Not far, maybe another mile." "You said that already. And I'll keep saying it until we get there." Caleb slowed his pace to match the boys. "You tired?" "No." Samuel's jaw set stubbornly. "I'm fine." "Course you are. But you know what, I'm tired. These old legs ain't what they used to be. Mind if I lean on you a bit?" Samuel looked skeptical. "You want to lean on me?" "If you don't mind. Man my age needs all the help he can get." A ghost of a smile flickered across the boy's face. "I guess that'd be okay." Caleb draped his arm lightly over Samuel's shoulders, taking some of the child's weight without being obvious about it. The boy leaned into him, seeking warmth, seeking something solid to hold on to. Ahead of them, Ezra had fallen into step beside the horse, his hand resting protectively on his mother's leg. Martha had lifted Sarah onto her back, carrying her sister piggyback despite her own exhaustion. The twins walked pressed together, sharing body heat. A family. A broken, battered, starving family, but a family nonetheless. "What the hell are you doing, Morrison? You can barely take care of yourself. What makes you think you can take care of 8 more people?" But he kept walking, kept putting one foot in front of the other. Because what else could he do? Leave them on that trail to die? He'd done a lot of things he wasn't proud of in his 40 years, but that wouldn't be one of them. The ranch appeared through the swirling snow like a mirage. It wasn't much a small house, a barn, a corral, a well, but to the Whitfield children, it might as well have been a palace. "Is that real?" Sarah whispered from Martha's back. "Is that a real house?" "It's real, sweetheart." Martha's voice cracked. "It's real." Caleb led them to the barn first. The house would take time to warm up, and they needed shelter now. "I'll get blankets and start a fire in the stove. The barn's got one installed it last winter when one of my mares was foaling." He pushed open the barn door, and a wave of warmth hit them, warmer than outside at least. "Ezra, there's clean hay in the back corner. Get your brothers and sisters settled there." The boy hesitated, clearly torn between following orders and staying close to his mother. "Go on, son. Your mama and the baby will be right behind you." Ezra looked at Rose. She nodded weakly. "Do as he says, Ezra. Take care of the little ones." That decided it. Ezra herded his siblings into the barn, his voice low and soothing as he directed them toward the hay pile. Caleb helped Rose down from the horse. She could barely stand, her legs buckling beneath her, but she refused to let go of hope. "She's burning up." Rose's voice was hollow with fear. "She's burning up, and I don't know what to do. I tried to keep her warm, tried to share my body heat. But it wasn't enough. Nothing I do is ever enough." "Hey." Caleb gripped her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me. Your baby is still breathing. Her heart's still beating. That means she's fighting, and we're going to help her fight. How I don't have medicine. I don't have money for a doctor. I don't have—" "You've got me." The words came out before Caleb could think better of them. "I ain't much, but I know a thing or two about fevers. Saw plenty of them during the war. Let me help." Rose stared at him. Tears spilled down her cheeks, carving tracks through the dirt and exhaustion. "Why?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why are you helping us? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Why would you—" She couldn't finish. Couldn't articulate the question that had been burning in her since she'd collapsed at his horse's feet. Why would anyone help us when no one else would? Caleb thought about how to answer that. Thought about all the complicated reasons, the guilt he carried, the emptiness he lived with the dead wife and daughter, whose faces he still saw every night. But in the end, he settled on the simplest truth. "Because you asked." Rose's face crumpled. That's all it took. I just had to ask." "Sometimes that's all it takes." Caleb's voice was rough. Finding someone willing to listen. He didn't know if Rose believed him. Didn't know if she trusted him any more than she had an hour ago. But she let him guide her into the barn. Let him settle her on a pile of clean hay, next to her children. Let him take hope from her arms so she could rest for just a moment. The baby was hot to the touch, dangerously hot. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, her tiny body limp as a rag doll. "I need cool water." Caleb cradled the child against his chest. "Not cold, cool. And clean cloths. Ezra, there's a pump by the well. Fill the bucket hanging by the door. Don't run, you'll slip on the ice. Just walk fast." Ezra was out the door before Caleb finished speaking. "Martha, in the house there's a chest by the fireplace. Inside, you'll find blankets and some old shirts. Bring as many as you can carry." Martha nodded and followed her brother. "The rest of you." Caleb looked at the remaining children. The twins, Samuel, little Sarah. all of them staring at him with huge, frightened eyes. "Your job is to stay warm and stay together. Can you do that for me?" They nodded in unison. "Good." Caleb turned his attention back to Hope, pressing the back of his hand to her forehead. "All right, little one. Let's see what we can do." The next 3 hours were a blur of activity. Caleb worked on Hope's fever, while Rose slept a deep, exhausted sleep that her body had been demanding for days. The older children moved in and out, bringing water, bringing blankets, bringing the food Caleb had stored in the house. The baby cried when he applied the cool cloths. Good. Crying meant strength, meant fight. "Is she going to die?" Caleb looked up to find Ezra standing over him, his young face tight with fear. "I don't know," Caleb answered honestly. "Her fever's high, real high, but she's fighting. Mama won't survive if Hope dies." Ezra's voice cracked. "She's already lost so much. If she loses another one..." "Another one. You lost a sibling." Caleb kept his voice gentle. "Before..." Ezra's jaw tightened. "A brother. Thomas. He would have been 6 this year. He didn't make it past his first winter." "I'm sorry. It was my fault." The words exploded out of Ezra like they'd been trapped inside him for years. "I was supposed to be watching him. But I was tired and I fell asleep, and when I woke up, he was so cold. He was so cold, and he wouldn't wake up, and Mama screamed and screamed and..." The boy's composure shattered. Tears poured down his cheeks, his whole body shaking with sobs he'd been holding back for God knows how long. Caleb shifted Hope into one arm and reached out with the other, pulling Ezra against his side. Hey now, listen to me." His voice was firm but kind. "You were a child. You're still a child. What happened to your brother wasn't your fault. But I was supposed to... You were supposed to be a kid. That's all you were supposed to be." Caleb tightened his grip. "Whatever went wrong, that's on the adults who should have been watching, not on you. My father said..." "I don't care what your father said." The words came out harsher than Caleb intended. He softened his tone. "Your father was wrong. About a lot of things, I'm guessing. Am I right?" Ezra didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. "Your brother's death wasn't your fault," Caleb repeated. "And if Hope doesn't make it, which I'm going to do everything in my power to prevent, that won't be your fault either. Or your mama's. Sometimes people just die, no matter how much we love them, no matter how hard we try to save them." "Like your daughter?" Caleb's throat closed up. For a moment, he couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Yeah," he finally managed. "Like my daughter." They sat there in silence, man and boy united by grief. They were both too tired to carry alone. Hope's small body rose and fell between them, each breath a tiny victory. "Mr. Morrison." Ezra's voice was small. Just Caleb's fine. "Caleb." The boy tested the name. "Thank you. For helping us. For helping Mama. She hasn't trusted anyone since we left. Since..." He trailed off, and Caleb sensed there was more to that sentence. More to the story of why a woman with 7 children had been wandering alone in the wilderness. But that was a conversation for another time, when bellies were full and bodies were warm and the crisis had passed. "Get some sleep," Caleb said. "Your mama's going to need you strong when she wakes up." "What about you?" "I'll watch over your sister, make sure she keeps breathing." Ezra hesitated, 12 years old and clearly wrestling with whether to trust this stranger completely. Then he nodded. "Wake me if anything changes." "I will." The boy curled up next to his siblings, his body instinctively positioning itself between them and the door, protecting them even in sleep. Caleb looked down at the baby in his arms, at her tiny fingers curled into fists, at her fever-flushed cheeks and rapid breathing. "Come on, little one," he murmured. "Your mama needs you. Your brothers and sisters need you. Don't you give up on them now." Hope's eyes fluttered open, just for a second, just long enough to focus on his face. Then they closed again, and she nestled against his chest with a small sigh. Her breathing evened out, deepened, became something that sounded less like struggle and more like rest. Caleb's hand trembled as he checked her forehead. Cooler. Not by much, but enough. The fever was breaking. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding and looked around the barn. At the 7 children sleeping in a pile like puppies. At their mother finally resting for the first time in days. At the life that had suddenly unexpectedly crashed into his carefully constructed solitude. What have you gotten yourself into, Morrison? He didn't know. Didn't have any answers. Didn't have a plan beyond getting through the night and making sure everyone was still breathing come morning. But for the first time in 6 years, the silence inside his chest felt a little less empty. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start with. Dawn crept through the barn's high windows, painting everything in shades of gold and gray. Caleb hadn't slept. He'd spent the night watching Hope breathe, watching her color slowly return from gray to pink, watching the death that had been hovering over her retreat inch by inch. She was going to make it. He knew it now with a certainty that settled into his bones. The baby was going to live. "Mama." The small voice came from the hay pile. Little Sarah was sitting up, rubbing her eyes, looking around with confusion. "Mama's still sleeping, sweetheart," Caleb said softly. "She needs rest." Sarah's gaze found him, and for a moment, fear flickered in her eyes. Then she seemed to remember where she was, and who he was, and the fear faded into something else. "Is Hope okay?" "She's better. Fever broke a few hours ago." "Can I see her?" Caleb hesitated, then nodded. "Come here, but be quiet, let the others sleep." Sarah picked her way across the barn, her small feet silent on the straw-covered floor. She knelt beside Caleb, her eyes fixed on her baby sister. "She looks peaceful." "She is. She was crying a lot before, when we were walking. She cried, and then she stopped, and Mama got really scared." Sarah's voice was matter-of-fact, the way children spoke about trauma they'd normalized. "I thought she was going to die like Thomas." "She's not going to die. Promise." Caleb looked at this 4-year-old girl who'd already seen too much death, too much hardship, too much of the ugly side of the world. "I promise," he said. "Hope is going to be fine." Sarah smiled. It transformed her whole face, making her look like the child she should have been all along. "Good." She leaned against his shoulder, seeking warmth and comfort. "I like it here. It's warm. And you're nice. You're nice." Such simple words. Such an enormous gift from a child who had every reason to think men weren't nice. Men weren't safe. "Thank you, Sarah," she yawned. "Can I stay here with you and Hope?" "Of course you can." Within minutes, she was asleep against his side, her breathing soft and even. Caleb sat there as the sun rose higher, a baby in his arms and a child against his shoulder, and felt something shift inside him. Something that had been locked away for 6 long, empty years. "What am I going to do with all of you?" He didn't know. But for the first time since he'd come home to those 2 graves in the churchyard, Caleb Morrison found himself looking forward to finding out. Rose woke to the smell of bacon. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't open her eyes. Just lay there breathing in that impossible scent, convinced she was dreaming. They hadn't eaten in 4 days. 5 maybe. She'd lost count somewhere between the second mountain pass and the frozen creek that nearly swallowed Samuel whole. But that smell was real. Bacon, and coffee, and something else, bread maybe. Fresh bread. "Mama's waking up." Sarah's voice. Close, excited. Rose forced her eyes open and found herself staring at a wooden ceiling she didn't recognize. Panic shot through her chest and she bolted upright, her heart hammering. "Hope, Where's Hope? Where are my children? Easy, easy. A man's voice, deep, calm. They're all here. They're all safe. Rose's vision cleared and she saw him. The stranger from the trail, Caleb Morrison. He was crouched a few feet away, holding a tin plate piled with food. And beyond him, her children. All 7 of them sitting in a circle on the barn floor, eating like they'd never seen food before. Ezra was shoveling bacon into his mouth. Martha was tearing bread into pieces and handing them to the twins. Samuel had his face buried in a bowl of something steaming. And Sarah. Little Sarah was cradling Hope in her lap, feeding her sister tiny sips of milk from a cup. Hope was awake, alert, her cheeks pink instead of gray. She's okay. Rose's voice cracked. She's really okay. Fever broke around midnight. Caleb held out the plate. She's weak, but she's gonna be fine. Now eat. You're no good to them if you collapse again. Rose took the plate with trembling hands. The first bite of bacon nearly made her weep. Slow down. Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. Your stomach's been empty too long. Eat too fast and you'll make yourself sick. She forced herself to chew slowly, to savor each bite, to believe this was real. Why are you doing this? Caleb stood brushing hay from his trousers. Asked me that already. You didn't really answer. Didn't I? Rose looked at him, really looked for the first time since she'd collapsed at his horse's feet. He was tall, lean, with the weathered face of a man who'd spent years working under open sky. His eyes were gray like winter clouds, and there was something in them that reminded her of a wounded animal. Dangerous, maybe, but not to her. You said because I asked. Rose set the plate aside, her appetite suddenly gone. But that's not a reason. People ask for help all the time. Most folks just keep walking. I ain't most folks. I can see that. She glanced at her children, at their full bellies and clean faces. Someone had washed them, wiped away the dirt and tears. You could have left us on that trail. Would have been easier. Easier ain't always right. And you always do what's right. Something flickered across Caleb's face. Pain, maybe. Or guilt. No, he said quietly. I don't. But I'm trying to do better. Before Rose could respond, Ezra appeared at her side. Mama, you need to eat more. Mr. Morrison says we can stay here until Hope's stronger. He says the snow's too deep to travel anyway. He says, slow down, baby. Rose touched her son's face, marveling at how different he looked after just one meal. Less hollow, less afraid. What else did Mr. Morrison say? He said we could sleep in the house tonight. There's 2 bedrooms and a fireplace, and real beds with blankets and everything. Ezra's voice dropped to a whisper. Mama, he's not like Pa. He's different. Rose's throat tightened. We'll see, she said carefully. We'll see. The morning passed in a blur of small miracles. Caleb brought more food, then water for washing, then clothes, old things worn soft with use but clean and warm. A dress for Rose that must have belonged to his wife. Shirts for the boys. Skirts that could be hemmed for the girls. These were Clara's, he said, handing over the bundle without meeting Rose's eyes. Been sitting in a trunk for 6 years. Might as well get some use. Rose held the dress against her chest, feeling the ghost of another woman in the fabric. Are you sure? She'd have wanted it. Caleb's voice was rough. She was the kind of person who'd give away her last blanket if someone needed it more. She sounds like a good woman. She was the best. Something passed between them. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition. 2 people who'd lost everything and were still trying to figure out how to keep breathing. Thank you, Rose whispered, for all of this. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Don't want repayment. Then what do you want? Caleb looked at her children scattered around the barn like seeds waiting to take root. Just want to see them healthy, he said. That's enough. By noon, they'd moved into the house. The children explored every corner like it was a castle. The twins found a wooden horse in the corner and immediately started fighting over it. Samuel discovered a shelf of books and sat down right there on the floor to read. Martha took charge of the kitchen, organizing the pantry with an efficiency that suggested she'd been running a household since she was old enough to walk. And Sarah, dear sweet Sarah, appointed herself Hope's personal guardian, following the toddler's every crawl with anxious eyes. "She's not going to break," Caleb said, watching Sarah hover over her sister for the 10th time in an hour. She almost did. Sarah's voice was small but fierce. "She almost broke forever. I have to watch her." Caleb knelt down so he was at the girl's eye level. "You know what the best thing you can do for Hope is?" "What?" "Be a kid. Play. Laugh. Let her see that it's safe to be happy here." He touched Sarah's cheek gently. "She's gonna be fine. I promise. And I don't break my promises." Sarah considered this for a long moment. "Okay," she finally said. "But I'm still going to watch her. Just a little bit." "That's fair." Rose observed this exchange from the doorway, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. This man, this stranger, knew how to talk to children. Knew how to make them feel safe without being condescending. Knew how to meet them where they were. Silas had never been like that. Silas had never been like anything good. "Mama." Martha appeared beside her flower on her apron. "Mr. Morrison's got supplies, but not enough for 8 extra people. Someone should go to town before the next storm hits." "I'll go." Rose straightened her shoulders. "I can." "You'll stay here and rest." Caleb's voice came from behind her. "I'll make the supply run. Town's only a few hours' ride when the roads are clear." "I can't let you spend more money on us." "You ain't letting me do anything. I'm choosing." He grabbed his coat from the hook by the door. "Ezra, you're in charge while I'm gone. Don't let anyone in. Don't open the door for strangers. If there's trouble, there's a rifle above the mantel. You know how to use it." Ezra's chin lifted. "Yes, sir. My pa taught me." Something dark passed through Caleb's eyes, but he nodded. "Good. I'll be back before nightfall." He was gone before Rose could argue. The hours crawled by. Rose tried to rest, but her mind wouldn't quiet. She kept replaying the past 3 months. The night she'd finally snapped. The way Silas had looked at her when she'd told him she was leaving. The cold certainty in his eyes when he'd said, "You'll never make it. You and those brats will be dead within a week. And when you come crawling back, because you will come crawling back, I'll make sure you never forget what happens when you disobey me." She'd left anyway. In the middle of the night, with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the few coins she'd hidden over the years. She'd walked until her feet bled. Until the children couldn't walk anymore. Until Hope got sick and Rose started to believe Silas had been right. They were going to die out there. All of them. And it would be her fault for thinking she could escape. Then Caleb Morrison had appeared like an answer to a prayer she'd stopped believing in. "Mama." Rose looked up to find Martha standing in front of her, worry creasing her young face. "You were crying." Rose touched her cheek and found it wet. "I'm just tired, sweetheart. It's nothing." "It's not nothing." Martha sat down beside her, taking her mother's hand. "You don't have to pretend with me, Mama. I'm 10. I know things." Rose looked at her daughter, this child who'd been forced to grow up too fast, who'd seen too much, who'd been through things no 10-year-old should survive. "What do you know, baby? I know Pa isn't really dead." The words hit Rose like a physical blow. "Martha, I heard you and Ezra talking, back in the mining camp, before we left." Martha's voice was steady, but her hand trembled in Rose's grip. "Pa didn't die in an accident. You just told people that so they wouldn't come looking for us." Rose's throat closed up. For a moment she couldn't breathe. "Yes," She finally whispered. "You're right. Your father is alive. Is he coming after us? I don't know. If he finds us, will he hurt you again?" Rose pulled her daughter close, pressing her face into Martha's hair to hide her tears. "I won't let him," she said fiercely. "I won't ever let him hurt any of you again. Do you understand me? But what if— No, what ifs?" Rose pulled back, gripping Martha's shoulders. "I made a choice when I left. I chose you, all of you, and I will burn down the whole world before I let that man near my children again." Martha stared at her mother with those two old eyes. "Okay," she said simply. "I believe you." But as Rose watched her daughter walk away, she couldn't shake the feeling that believing wasn't going to be enough. Silas would come. Eventually. He always did. And when he found them, Rose wasn't sure even a man like Caleb Morrison would be able to stop what happened next. Caleb returned just as the sun was setting, his horse laden with supplies. The children swarmed him like he was some kind of hero, helping carry bags and boxes into the house. Even Ezra, who'd been suspicious from the start, grabbed a sack of flour and hefted it over his shoulder with something approaching respect. "You got enough food for a month," Martha observed, surveying the hall. "Maybe two if we're careful." "Winter's long up here." Caleb set down a crate of preserved vegetables. "Rather have too much than not enough." Rose stood in the doorway, watching him interact with her children, watching the easy way he moved around them, watching the way they were starting to relax in his presence. It scared her. She'd trusted a man once. Let him into her life, into her heart, into her children's lives. And he'd destroyed everything. What made her think this time would be different? Something wrong. Caleb was standing in front of her now, his gray eyes searching her face. "No. Rose shook her head. "Thank you. For all of this. I don't know what to say." "Don't need to say anything." He pulled something from his coat pocket. "But you might want to look at this." He handed her a folded newspaper. Rose's hands shook as she opened it. The headline hit her like a punch to the gut. "Mining foreman offers reward for missing wife and children." Beneath the headline was Silas's face, staring up at her from the page with those cold, empty eyes. $500 reward, Caleb said quietly. "That's a lot of money in these parts. People will be looking." Rose couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stare at her husband's face and feel her whole world crumbling around her. "Your husband's alive." It wasn't a question. "Yes." "He hurt you." "Yes." "Is he the kind of man who gives up?" Rose met Caleb's eyes, saw the understanding there, the hard knowledge of what men like Silas were capable of. "No," she said. "He's not." Caleb nodded slowly. Then he took the newspaper from her hands and tossed it into the fire. "Then we don't give him anything to find." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you and your children are safe here, for as long as you need." His jaw tightened. "And if your husband comes looking, he's going to find out real quick that I'm not the kind of man who lets bullies win." Rose stared at him. This stranger who'd saved them. This broken man who seemed determined to put himself between her family and the monster hunting them. "You don't know what you're getting into." "Maybe not." Caleb's eyes hardened. "But I know what I'd be walking away from if I turned you out, and I'm done walking away from people who need help." "Why?" Rose grabbed his arm, desperate to understand. "Why do you care so much about what happens to us?" For a long moment, Caleb didn't answer. He looked at her children, at the life slowly returning to their faces, at the trust beginning to grow in their eyes. Then he looked back at Rose. "Because I had a family once, a wife who loved me, a daughter I never got to meet." His voice cracked. "And I've spent 6 years trying to figure out why I survived when they didn't. Maybe this is the answer. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to do with whatever time I've got left." Rose felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Caleb, don't. He stepped back, his expression shuddering. Don't feel sorry for me. I don't want pity. I just want... He stopped, swallowed hard. I just want to do something that matters. Something that makes all the pain worth it. Before Rose could respond, a small voice interrupted them. Mama! It was Hope toddling toward them on unsteady legs. Mama hungry. Rose swept her daughter into her arms, pressing kisses against her warm, healthy cheeks. Okay, baby. Mama's going to get you some food. She carried Hope toward the kitchen, pausing at the doorway to look back at Caleb. He was staring into the fire, his face carved from stone. But there was something in his eyes, something vulnerable and raw, that made Rose's heart ache in ways she didn't understand. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. He didn't respond, didn't turn around. But she saw his shoulders relax just a little, saw some of the tension drain from his body, and she knew somehow that her words had reached him. A week passed, then two. The snow piled up outside, trapping them in a cocoon of white. But inside Caleb's house, something was growing. Something fragile and new. The children blossomed. Samuel devoured every book on Caleb's shelf and started asking questions about ranching. The twins stopped flinching at loud noises. Martha took over the kitchen, completely producing meals that made Caleb's eyes widen in appreciation. Sarah's nightmares faded. Hope learned to walk without wobbling, and Ezra, suspicious, protective Ezra, started following Caleb around the ranch like a shadow. You're good with horses, Caleb observed one afternoon watching the boy brush down his mare. Natural. Ezra ducked his head, but Rose saw the pride flash across his face. My pa never let me near the animals. Said I'd just mess things up. Your pa was wrong about a lot of things. Ezra's hand stilled on the horse's flank. Yeah, he said quietly. He was. That night, after the children were asleep, Rose found Caleb on the porch, staring out at the snow-covered landscape. It's beautiful here, she said, pulling her shawl tighter. Peaceful. It's lonely. Caleb didn't look at her. At least it was, before you showed up. Rose moved to stand beside him close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Tell me about Clara. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. She was sunshine, he finally said. Pure, bright sunshine. Grew up on a farm in Ohio. Sweetest soul you ever met. She could look at the worst person in the world and find something good in them. She sounds wonderful. She was. His voice caught. We got married right before the war. I promised her I'd come home. Promised her we'd have a life together. A family. What happened? I was gone for 4 years. Battle after battle. Hell after hell. The whole time she kept writing letters. Kept telling me about our daughter Emma. How she was growing. What words she was learning. What her laugh sounded like. Caleb's hands clenched on the porch railing. I got home 3 weeks after they buried them. Scarlet fever swept through the territory that winter. Took Clara and Emma both. I didn't even get to say goodbye. Rose's heart broke. I'm so sorry. I built this ranch after. Thought if I worked hard enough I could outrun the grief. But you can't outrun something that lives inside you. He finally turned to look at her, and Rose saw his tears gleaming in the moonlight. Then you showed up. You and those 7 children. And for the first time in 6 years, this place felt like something other than a tomb. Rose reached out and took his hand. His fingers were rough, calloused, but they trembled as they wrapped around hers. We're not going to replace what you lost, she said gently. No one can do that. I know. But maybe... She squeezed his hand. Maybe we can help you build something new. Caleb looked at her, really looked. And Rose saw something shift in his eyes. Something that had been closed for so long finally beginning to open. I'd like that, he said quietly. I'd like that a lot. They stood there in silence, holding hands while the snow fell around them. And somewhere in the distance, too far to see, a rider was making his way west, following the trail, getting closer. 3 weeks after they arrived, a stranger came to town asking questions. Caleb heard about it from the general store owner, a weathered woman named Agnes, who'd been running the shop since before the war. Big fella, mean eyes. Showed up yesterday asking about a woman with 7 children. Agnes handed Caleb his supplies, her face creased with concern. Offered money for information, $50. Caleb's blood went cold. What did you tell him? Told him I ain't seen nobody matching that description. Agnes leaned closer, lowering her voice. But not everyone in this town's got my discretion. He was drinking at the saloon last night. People talk when there's money on the table. Which way did he head? East, back toward the mountains. But Caleb... Agnes grabbed his arm. That man's got violence written all over him. Whatever business he's got with you, be careful. Caleb rode home faster than he should have. Rose was in the kitchen when he burst through the door, flour on her hands and a smile on her face that died the moment she saw his expression. What happened? Someone's asking about you in town. Caleb didn't waste time with softening the blow. Big man, mean eyes, offering money. Rose's face went white. Silas! He headed east, but that doesn't mean he won't be back. We need to be prepared. Prepared how? Rose's voice rose. He's a foreman in a mining camp. He's got connections, money, friends who'll do whatever he asks. What can we possibly do against that? We can fight. With what, 7 children and 2 broken people? Hey. Caleb crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. Look at me. Rose, look at me. She raised her eyes to his, and he saw the terror there. The bone-deep fear of a woman who'd spent years under a monster's thumb. I survived 4 years of the bloodiest war this country's ever seen, he said quietly. I've killed men who were trying to kill me. I've done things I'll never be able to forget. And I'm telling you right now, your husband doesn't scare me. Not even a little. You don't know him. I know enough. His grip tightened. I know he hurt you. I know he terrorized your children. I know he's the reason your son learned to shoot and your daughter learned to be invisible. And I know that men like him are cowards at the core. Push back hard enough, they crumble. And if he doesn't crumble, Caleb's jaw set, then I'll make sure he never hurts you again, one way or another. Rose stared at him. This man who'd taken them in, fed them, clothed them, given them a home when they had nothing. This man who was willing to put his life on the line for people he'd known less than a month. Why? She whispered. Why would you do that for us? Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he reached up and brushed a strand of flour-dusted hair from her face. Because I'm tired of watching good people suffer while bad men get away with everything. Because those children in there deserve a father who protects them instead of one who hurts them. And because... He stopped. His hand lingered on her cheek. Because I think I'm starting to feel something I haven't felt in a long time. And I'm not ready to lose it. Rose's breath caught. Caleb. Mama. Ezra's shout shattered the moment. They sprang apart as the boy burst into the kitchen, his face pale with fear. There's someone coming up the road, 3 riders. Rose's heart stopped. Is it? I don't know, I couldn't see their faces. Ezra was already moving toward the mantel. But they're coming fast. Caleb grabbed his rifle. Get the children into the back bedroom. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. I'm staying with you. Ezra's chin lifted stubbornly. I can shoot. No. Caleb's voice was iron. Your job is to protect your mother and your brothers and sisters. That's more important than anything. Can you do that? Ezra hesitated. Then he nodded. Yes, sir. Good. Now go. Rose gathered her children and herded them toward the back of the house. The younger ones were confused, frightened. Hope started to cry. Sarah clung to Martha's skirt. It's going to be okay, Rose said, even as her heart screamed that nothing was ever going to be okay again. Mama's right here. Everything's going to be fine. She locked the bedroom door behind them and pressed her back against it, listening. Outside, she heard horses approaching. Slowing. Stopping. Then a voice she'd hoped never to hear again echoed through the walls. Caleb Morrison. I know they're in there. Send out my wife and children, and nobody has to get hurt. Rose closed her eyes. Silas had found them. Caleb stepped onto the porch with his rifle raised. 3 men sat on horseback in his yard. The one in front was big, broad shoulders, thick neck, the kind of build that came from years of hard labor. His face was handsome in a cruel way, and his eyes were empty, dead, like looking into the eyes of a snake. This was Silas Whitfield. You're on my land, Caleb said, his voice flat. I suggest you turn around and leave. Silas laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. Your land. My wife's in there. My children. That makes it my business. He swung down from his horse, his 2 men following suit. Now we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Your choice. Only choice here is yours. Leave now or don't leave at all. Silas's smile faded. You think you scare me? Some broken-down rancher playing hero? He took a step forward. I've got legal documents, marriage certificate, birth records. Those children are my property. That woman is my property, and you've got no right to keep them from me. Property. Caleb's grip tightened on his rifle. That's what you call your family property. That's what they are. The law agrees with me. Silas reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. Got a letter from a judge in Kansas Territory. Says I've got full custody. Says my wife is mentally unfit. Says anyone harboring her is committing a crime. Kansas Territory ain't got jurisdiction here. Don't matter. Law's law. Silas tucked the paper away. Now I'm going to count to 10. When I'm done, you're going to put down that rifle and bring out my family. If you don't, things are going to get real ugly real fast. Then I guess they're going to get ugly. Silas's eyes narrowed. You'd die for them. People you've known, what, a few weeks? If I have to. That's a real stupid friend. Maybe. Caleb's aim didn't waver. But I ain't your friend, and I ain't moving. For a long moment, no one spoke. The wind howled across the snow, and somewhere in the barn, a horse whinnied nervously. Then Silas moved. He was faster than Caleb expected. His hand shot out, grabbing the rifle barrel and shoving it aside. Caleb pulled the trigger, but the shot went wild, burying itself in the porch railing. Before he could react, Silas's fist connected with his jaw. Pain exploded through Caleb's skull. He staggered backward, and Silas pressed his advantage, driving a knee into his stomach. The air left Caleb's lungs in a rush, and he dropped to one knee, gasping. Not so tough now, are you? Silas grabbed him by the hair, yanking his head back. You think you're the first man who's tried to play hero with my wife? You think you're special. He slammed Caleb's face into the porch railing. Blood filled Caleb's mouth. His vision swam. But he'd survived 4 years of war. He'd taken worse beatings than this and kept fighting. He twisted, driving his elbow into Silas's ribs. The bigger man grunted and loosened his grip. Caleb used the opening to scramble away, putting distance between them. His rifle was on the ground out of reach, but he still had the knife at his belt. You're going to regret that, Silas snarled, touching his side. I was going to let you live. Now I'm going to make you watch while I drag my family out of that house. Then I'm going to kill you. You can try. Silas lunged. Inside the bedroom, Rose heard everything. Every punch, every grunt of pain, every word Silas spat in that voice she knew too well. Mama, what's happening? Sarah was crying, clutching hope against her chest. Mama, I'm scared. Shh, baby. It's okay. It's going to be okay. But it wasn't okay. Rose could hear Caleb fighting, could hear the sounds of violence, and she knew that Silas was going to kill him, just like he'd promised. I have to go out there. Ezra grabbed her arm. No, Mr. Morrison said to stay here. He's going to die, Ezra. Your father is going to kill him. Then let me go. The boy's face was pale but determined. I can shoot. I can help. No, you're staying with your brothers and sisters. That's your job. Mama, promise me Ezra. Rose gripped his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. Promise me you'll protect them no matter what happens. Tears streamed down the boy's face. I promise. Rose kissed his forehead. Then she unlocked the door and stepped out into the hall. She could hear them on the porch now. Closer. The crash of bodies, the thud of fists on flesh. She moved toward the sound, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. The front door hung open. Through it, she saw Caleb on the ground, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. Silas stood over him, his boot raised to stomp down on his chest. Stop. Her voice rang out clear and strong, surprising even herself. Silas froze, turned, and when his eyes found her, a slow smile spread across his face. There she is, my beautiful wife. He stepped away from Caleb, moving toward her instead. Did you really think you could run from me, Rose? Did you really think I wouldn't find you? Stay back. Or what? He laughed. You'll hurt me. He took another step. You never could hurt me, Rose. That's what makes you perfect. So soft, so obedient, so easy to control. I'm not that woman anymore. No. Silas was close now. Close enough that Rose could smell the whiskey on his breath. Let me tell you what's going to happen. You and the children are coming with me. We're going back to Kansas. And you're going to spend the rest of your life making up for the trouble you've caused. I'd rather die. Silas's hand shot out, grabbing her throat. That can be arranged. He squeezed, and Rose couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Black spots danced in her vision as his fingers dug into her windpipe. But first you're going to watch your hero die. Silas's voice was calm, almost conversational. Then I'm going to deal with that oldest boy of yours. He's been too mouthy for too long. Time someone taught him his place. Rose clawed at his hand, but his grip was iron. And the girls? Silas's smile widened. Well, I've got plans for them too. Something inside Rose shattered, not broke. Shattered. The terror that had controlled her for years, the submission that had been beaten into her, it all fell away, replaced by something primal and fierce. She was a mother, and this man was threatening her children. Rose stopped clawing at his hand. Instead, she drove her knee up with every ounce of strength she had. It connected with exactly the right spot. Silas's eyes went wide. His grip loosened. He made a strangled sound that might have been a scream if he'd had the breath for it. Rose ripped herself free and stumbled backward. You... Silas gasped, doubled over. You little... Rose! Caleb's voice. She turned to find him struggling to his feet, blood on his face, but his eyes clear. The rifle. Get the rifle. She saw it then, lying on the porch where Silas had knocked it from Caleb's hands. She dove for it, her fingers closing around the cold metal, just as Silas's hand grabbed her ankle. You're not going anywhere, he snarled, dragging her backward. Rose kicked, twisted, felt her foot connect with his face. He howled and let go. She scrambled up the rifle in her hands and swung around to face him. Silas was on his knees, blood streaming from his nose. His two men stood frozen near their horses, clearly unsure what to do. You think you can shoot me? Silas laughed through the blood. You don't have the guts. Rose's hands trembled on the rifle. He was right. She'd never shot anyone in her life. Never even held a gun before this moment. Every instinct was screaming at her to put it down, to submit to be the obedient wife she'd been trained to be. Rose. Caleb's voice was steady behind her. You don't have to do this. Just keep him covered. I'll handle the rest. No. Rose's voice surprised her with its strength. No, I need to do this. She stepped closer to Silas, the rifle aimed at his chest. For 12 years, you beat me. Humiliated me. Made me believe I was worthless. Made my children live in fear. Her voice shook, but her aim held steady. I let you because I thought I deserved it. Because I thought there was no way out. Rose. Shut up! The words exploded out of her. You don't get to talk anymore. You don't get to threaten. You don't get to touch me or my children ever again. Silas's eyes darted around looking for escape, finding none. If you kill me, you'll hang, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. They'll call it murder. You'll leave your children orphans. Maybe. Rose's finger tightened on the trigger. Maybe not. But at least they'll be free. Rose. Caleb's hand touched her shoulder. Don't. He'll never stop. You know that. He'll keep coming. Keep hunting us. Keep... I know. Caleb moved to stand beside her, his hand covering hers on the rifle. But this isn't the way. If you kill him, it'll haunt you forever. Your children will know their mother is a killer. Is that what you want? Tears streamed down Rose's face. I just want them safe. They will be. I promise. Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. We'll do this the right way. The law, witnesses, a judge who isn't in his pocket. The laws never protected us. This isn't Kansas. This is Montana territory. Things are different here. How can you be sure? Caleb looked at Silas, still kneeling in the snow, and his jaw tightened. Because I'm not going to let him win. Not today. Not ever. Before Rose could respond, the sound of approaching horses cut through the tension. Everyone turned. 3 riders were coming up the trail, moving fast. As they got closer, Rose could make out a badge on the lead rider's chest. The sheriff. Well, well. Sheriff Daniel Cross reined his horse to a stop, his weathered face taking in the scene. Looks like I got here just in time. Sheriff. Silas scrambled to his feet, wiping blood from his face. Thank God, these people attacked me. I'm here to collect my wife and children, and they assaulted me. The sheriff's eyes moved from Silas to Rose to Caleb. That true? No, sir. Caleb stepped forward. This man forced his way onto my property and attempted to assault Mrs. Whitfield. He also threatened to harm her children. That's a lie. Silas's voice rose. I've got legal documents. My wife is mentally unfit. I have custody of those children. This man is harboring fugitives. Kansas documents don't mean much in Montana, Sheriff Cross said mildly. And from where I'm standing, it looks like you're the one causing trouble. I'm the victim here. Funny. The sheriff's eyes swept over the scene. The way I see it, there's a woman with marks on her throat, a man bleeding from a beating, and you standing there without a scratch, until Mrs. Whitfield defended herself. He leaned forward in his saddle. Mrs. Whitfield, you want to tell me what happened here? Rose took a deep breath. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading and hoping for. The moment she finally told the truth. My husband has been beating me for 12 years, she said, her voice steady, despite the tears on her cheeks. He's broken my bones, left me unable to walk for days, threatened my children. 3 months ago, I finally found the courage to leave. He's been hunting us ever since. She's lying, Silas snarled. She's mentally ill. She imagines things. I'm not finished. Rose's voice cut through his protests. He hurt my son Thomas so badly that the boy died from his injuries. The doctor said it was an accident, but we all knew the truth. Silence fell over the yard. Silas's face went pale. That's a lie. Thomas died of fever. Everyone knows. Everyone knows what you paid them to say. Rose's voice shook with fury and grief. My boy died because you threw him across the room for crying. He hit his head on the stove. He never woke up. You can't prove that. Can't I? Rose reached up and began unbuttoning the collar of her dress. I've got 12 years of proof written on my body, Silas. Scars that never healed. Bones that set wrong because you wouldn't let me see a doctor. Do you want me to show the sheriff? Do you want me to show everyone what kind of man you really are? Rose, stop. No. She pulled the collar aside, revealing the marks on her neck, not just the fresh ones from today, but old scars. White lines that crisscrossed her skin like a map of pain. I'm done hiding. I'm done being ashamed. You did this to me, Silas, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. Sheriff Cross's expression had gone from neutral to murderous. Mr. Whitfield. His voice was ice. I think you'd better come with me. On what charges? She's my wife. I have rights. Not here, you don't. The sheriff dismounted, his hand resting on his gun. In Montana territory, a man who beats his wife can be charged with assault. A man who kills his child can be charged with murder. You can't prove I killed Thomas. Maybe not, but I can hold you while we investigate. And something tells me once word gets out about what you've done, witnesses are going to start coming forward. Cross looked at Rose. Am I right, ma'am? Other people know the truth. Rose thought about the servants who'd looked away, the neighbors who'd heard screams and done nothing, the doctor who'd taken Silas's money to keep quiet. Yes, she said. Plenty of people know. Silas's face twisted with rage. You think this changes anything? I have money, connections. You can arrest me today, but I'll be out tomorrow. And when I am, I'm coming back. For her, for the children, for all of them. That a threat? It's a promise. Sheriff Cross studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded to his deputies. Cuff him. We'll let the judge sort this out. Silas struggled as the deputies grabbed his arms, but he was outnumbered and outgunned. Within minutes, he was cuffed and loaded onto one of the horses. You'll regret this, he snarled at Rose. All of you will regret this. Shut him up, Cross ordered. One of the deputies stuffed a rag in Silas's mouth. Mrs. Whitfield. The sheriff tipped his hat to Rose. I'll need you to come into town tomorrow to give a formal statement. Bring anyone who can corroborate what you've told me. I'll be there. Mr. Morrison. Cross's eyes moved to Caleb. You might want to see a doctor about that head. I'll live. I don't doubt it. A ghost of a smile crossed the sheriff's face. You've got good instincts, Morrison, and good taste in people to protect. Then he was gone, his deputies following Silas's muffled curses fading into the distance. For a long moment, Rose just stood there trembling. Then the front door burst open and her children came pouring out. Mama! Sarah threw herself at Rose's legs. Mama, we heard everything. Is the bad man gone? He's gone, baby. Rose scooped up her daughter, holding her tight. He's gone. Ezra appeared at her side, his face pale but determined. Is it really over? I don't know. Rose looked at Caleb, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. But we took the first step. That's something. Martha had the twins by the hands, and Samuel was carrying Hope, who had slept through the entire confrontation. Are we safe now? Daniel asked, his small voice trembling. Safer than we've ever been, Rose said. Because of Mr. Morrison? Rose looked at Caleb again. He was battered, bleeding, standing in the snow like he'd just fought a war, which in a way he had. Yes, she said softly. Because of Mr. Morrison. Caleb didn't say anything. He just nodded once, then turned and walked toward the barn. But Rose saw him stumble, saw him catch himself on the doorframe, saw the blood dripping from his forehead onto the snow. Ezra, take the children inside. Rose set Sarah down. Get them warm, get them fed, I'll be there soon. But Mama? Now, Ezra. The boy hesitated, then nodded. He herded his siblings into the house, closing the door behind them. Rose crossed the yard to where Caleb stood in the barn doorway. You need to let me look at that wound. It's nothing. You can barely stand. Caleb turned to face her, and Rose saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the pain he was trying to hide. I've had worse. I know. She stepped closer, reaching up to touch his face. But you don't have to be strong right now. Not for me. Not after what you just did. His jaw tightened. I didn't do much. You're the one who stopped him. You're the one who told the truth. You gave me the courage. Rose's hand lingered on his cheek. You gave me a reason to fight. Caleb's eyes met hers. Something passed between them. Something raw and real and terrifying in its intensity. Rose, don't. She shook her head. Don't tell me it's too soon. Don't tell me I don't know what I'm feeling. I've spent 12 years being told what to think and what to feel. I'm done with that. What do you want? I want. She stopped, took a breath. I want to stay here, with you. I want my children to grow up safe and loved. I want to wake up every morning without fear. And I want... She couldn't finish. Caleb reached up and covered her hand with his. You want what? I want you to kiss me. He didn't move. For one terrible moment, Rose thought she'd misread everything that he didn't feel, what she felt that she'd made a fool of herself. Then his hand slid into her hair and he pulled her close. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, testing. But then Rose pressed closer and something ignited between them. Something fierce and hungry and long denied. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. This is a bad idea, Caleb murmured against her lips. I know. We barely know each other. I know. Your husband is going to prison. Rose pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. And even if he wasn't, I wouldn't care. I'm done living my life based on what Silas Whitfield wants. I'm done being afraid. Caleb studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly a smile crossed his battered features. You're something else, Rose Whitfield. Is that good or bad? Good. He kissed her forehead gently. Definitely good. They stood there in the barn doorway holding each other while the snow fell around them. And for the first time in 12 years, Rose felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. Real hope. The kind that came from knowing you were finally free. The next morning came too fast. Rose hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Silas's face, heard his threats, felt his hand around her throat. But she also remembered Caleb's kiss, the way his arms had felt around her, the warmth spreading through her chest when he'd looked at her like she was something precious. Mama? Martha stood in the doorway, already dressed, her face pinched with worry. The sheriff's here. He wants to talk to you. Rose's stomach dropped. Already? He looks serious, Mama. Real serious. Rose dressed quickly, her hands trembling as she buttoned her collar. When she stepped into the main room, Sheriff Cross was standing by the fire hat in hands. Caleb stood beside him, his face unreadable. Mrs. Whitfield. The sheriff nodded. I'm afraid I've got bad news. What happened? Cross exchanged a glance with Caleb. Silas escaped last night, killed one of my deputies, and took off on his horse. The world tilted. Rose grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. How? Had a knife hidden in his boot. We should have searched him better. That's on me. Cross's jaw tightened. But that don't change the situation. He's out there somewhere, and I've got no doubt he's coming back for you. Then we need to leave. Rose's voice rose. We need to go. Now. Before he... No. Caleb's hand closed over hers. Running didn't work before. It won't work now. Then what do we do? We fight. Caleb looked at the sheriff. What kind of help can you give us? I've got 2 deputies left. I can spare one to stay here, but that's all. The rest of us will be out searching for Whitfield. Cross shook his head. I won't lie to you, Morrison. That man's got murder in his eyes. He won't stop until he gets what he wants, or someone puts him down for good. Then someone better put him down. The sheriff studied Caleb's face for a long moment. You know the law about killing a man even in self-defense. I know it. And you're willing to take that risk. Caleb's eyes moved to Rose, then to the children huddled in the doorway, watching with frightened faces. For them, I'd risk anything. Cross nodded slowly. Then I'll leave Deputy Miller with you. He's young, but he's steady. And Morrison. The sheriff's voice dropped. Watch your back. Whitfield ain't the kind of man who fights fair. Neither am I. Not anymore. After Cross left, the house fell into tense silence. Rose gathered the children in the main room, her heart aching at their frightened faces. Samuel was clutching his book like a shield. The twins held hands so tightly their knuckles were white. Sarah had crawled into Martha's lap, hiding her face. And Ezra stood by the window, watching the trail with eyes that looked far too old. "Is Pa coming back?" Daniel whispered. Rose knelt in front of her children, taking the twins' hands in hers. "Yes, baby. He's probably coming back." "Is he going to hurt us?" "No." Rose's voice was fierce. "I won't let him. Mr. Morrison won't let him. Do you understand? Nobody is going to hurt you. Promise?" Rose thought about all the promises she'd made over the years. All the time she'd told them things would get better, that Papa would change, that everything would be okay. All the lies she'd told because the truth was too terrible. "I promise," she said. "And this time, I mean it." Hope toddled over and patted Rose's cheek with her small hand. "Mama said, no baby." Rose pulled the toddler into her arms. "Mama's not sad. Mama's getting ready to fight." The day passed in agonizing slowness. Deputy Miller, a young man barely older than Ezra, patrolled the property, while Caleb taught the older children what to do if trouble came, where to hide, how to stay quiet, which routes led away from the ranch if they needed to run. Rose watched her son drink in every word, his jaw set with determination. "You're making him grow up too fast," she said quietly when Ezra had gone to check on the horses. "He's already grown up." Caleb's voice was gentle but honest. "That boy's been carrying this family since before you left. I'm just giving him tools to do the job. He's 12. I know." Caleb met her eyes. "And if I could give him back his childhood, I would. But I can't. All I can do is make sure he survives long enough to have a future." Rose wanted to argue, wanted to rage against the unfairness of it all. But she knew he was right. What about the others? Martha's got a good head on her shoulders. She'll keep the little ones calm. Samuel's quiet, but he's smart. He'll follow instructions. The twins stick together, which is good. They'll protect each other. And Sarah and Hope. Caleb's expression softened. They're too young to understand what's happening. That's a blessing. Just keep them close and don't let them out of your sight. Rose nodded, blinking back tears. "I never wanted this for them. I just wanted—" Her voice broke. "I just wanted them to be safe, to be happy, to have the childhood I never had." "You will give them that." Caleb's hand found hers. "When this is over, when Silas is gone for good, you'll give them everything they deserve." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've seen what you're willing to do for them." His grip tightened. "You walked through a blizzard with 7 children. You faced down a monster with nothing but a rifle and your own courage. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Rose. Silas Whitfield doesn't stand a chance against that kind of love." Before Rose could respond, Ezra burst through the door. "Someone's coming. 2 riders from the east." Caleb grabbed his rifle. "Get the children to the back room. Now." Rose didn't argue. She gathered her family and herded them toward the bedroom, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "No matter what you hear, stay quiet." She closed the door and pressed her back against it, listening. Voices outside. Caleb's low rumble. Another man's response, not Silas. Someone else. Then footsteps on the porch. The front door opened. "Rose," Caleb's voice. "You can come out. It's all right." Slowly, carefully, Rose opened the bedroom door. 2 strangers stood in the main room. An older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, and a tall man in a lawyer's coat. Deputy Miller hovered near the window, his hand on his gun. "Mrs. Whitfield." The woman stepped forward. "My name is Agnes Thornton. I own the general store in town. And this is Mr. Harold Green. He's a lawyer from Helena." Rose looked at Caleb in confusion. "What's going on?" "Mrs. Thornton came to me this morning." Mr. Green said, his voice calm and measured. "She told me about your situation. I've agreed to take your case. My case. Your divorce petition, and the custody hearing for your children." The lawyer opened his satchel and pulled out a stack of papers. "Montana Territory has some of the most progressive laws in the country regarding women's rights. With the right evidence, we can ensure your husband never has legal claim to you or your children again." Rose stared at him. "I can't afford a lawyer." "I ain't asking for money." Mr. Green's formal demeanor cracked slightly, revealing something human underneath. "I've got a sister back east. Her husband was like yours. She didn't survive it." His jaw tightened. "I couldn't save her, but maybe I can help you." Rose's throat closed up. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll fight." Agnes stepped forward, taking Rose's hands. "Say you'll stand up in that courtroom and tell the truth about what that monster did to you. There are women all over this territory who've suffered the way you have. Most of them stay silent because they think no one will believe them. You could change that." "How?" "By being brave enough to speak." Agnes squeezed her hands. "By showing them that it's possible to break free." Rose looked at Caleb. He nodded once, his eyes full of faith. Then she looked at her children clustered in the bedroom doorway. Ezra's fierce determination, Martha's quiet strength, the twins clinging to each other, Sarah's tear-stained face, Hope's innocent confusion. They were watching her, waiting to see what she would do, waiting to see if their mother was strong enough to save them. "All right," Rose said, her voice steady, despite the fear churning in her gut. "Tell me what I need to do." The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Mr. Green gathered statements from Rose about every beating, every threat, every moment of cruelty she'd endured over 12 years. It was painful reliving those memories. More than once, Rose had to stop and compose herself, tears streaming down her face. But she kept going. For her children. For herself. "The scars will be powerful evidence," Mr. Green said gently, "if you're willing to show them." "I've already shown them once. I can do it again." Agnes brought witnesses from town. The doctor who'd treated Rose for a broken arm 5 years ago, he'd suspected abuse, but had been too afraid to report it. A neighbor from Kansas who'd heard screams from the Whitfield house and done nothing. A former maid who'd seen Silas strike Rose with a fireplace poker. One by one they came forward. One by one they told their stories. "Why now?" Rose asked Agnes after the 5th witness had given her statement. "Why are they speaking up now when they stayed silent for so long?" "Because you went first." Agnes's eyes were fierce. "You showed them it was possible. That someone could stand up to a man like Silas Whitfield and survive. They were afraid before. You gave them courage." Rose didn't feel courageous. She felt terrified, exhausted, and overwhelmed. But she kept going. On the 3rd night, Caleb found her on the porch, staring out at the darkness. "You should be sleeping." "Can't." Rose wrapped her arms around herself. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him, standing over the children, hurting them. And I can't—" Her voice broke. "I can't stop it." Caleb moved to stand beside her. "He's not going to hurt them. I won't let him." "What if you can't stop him? What if he gets past you? What if—" "Rose." Caleb turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Look at me." She raised her eyes to his. "I have spent 6 years living with ghosts, waking up every morning wondering what the point is, telling myself that everyone I loved was gone and I was better off alone." His voice was rough. "Then you showed up on that trail begging me to save your children, and something changed. Something woke up inside me that I thought was dead. Caleb, I'm not going to lose you." His hands tightened on her shoulders. I'm not going to lose those children. I don't care if Silas Whitfield comes back with an army. I will stand between him and your family, and I will not move. Tears spilled down Rose's cheeks. You could die. Then I'll die protecting something that matters. That's better than the way I've been living. Don't say that. Rose grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer. Don't you dare say that. You matter. You matter to me. You matter to the children. You matter to... She couldn't finish. The words were too big, too terrifying. But Caleb understood. He always understood. He pulled her into his arms and held her while she cried. Held her until the tears stopped and her breathing steadied. Held her until the terror faded into something smaller, something manageable. I love you, Rose whispered against his chest. I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other, but I love you. Caleb's arms tightened around her. I love you too. His voice was barely audible. God help me, I love you too. They stood there in the darkness, holding each other, while somewhere out in the night a monster was circling closer. The hearing was set for the 4th day. Rose dressed carefully in the finest dress Agnes had brought her, a simple blue cotton, but clean and pressed. Martha braided her hair, while Sarah watched her small face, serious. You look pretty, Mama. Thank you, baby. Are you going to make the bad man go away? Rose knelt down to look her daughter in the eyes. I'm going to try, sweetheart. I'm going to try as hard as I can. Good. Sarah nodded firmly. I don't like the bad man. He makes you cry. After today, he won't make me cry anymore. I promise. The ride into town was tense. Caleb drove the wagon while Deputy Miller rode alongside his rifle across his saddle. Rose sat in the back with the older children Hope on her lap, and Sarah pressed against her side. Ezra watched the tree line with narrowed eyes. He could be anywhere. I know. Rose kept her voice calm. But we can't let fear stop us. That's what he wants. I'm not afraid of him. Rose looked at her son, this boy, who'd been forced to become a man far too young. It's okay to be afraid, Ezra. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what needs to be done, even though you're scared. Ezra was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. I'll protect the little ones, no matter what. I know you will, baby. I know you will. The courthouse was packed. Word had spread about the hearing and half the town had turned out to watch. Some faces were sympathetic, others were hostile. A few were simply curious. Rose walked through the crowd with her chin high, Caleb at her side, her children trailing behind. The courtroom was small and stuffy, but Judge Morrison, no relation to Caleb, had a reputation for fairness. He sat behind a heavy oak desk, his weathered face impassive as Rose took her seat. Mrs. Whitfield. The judge's voice was deep and measured. You've filed for divorce from your husband, Silas Whitfield, on grounds of cruelty and abuse. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And you're seeking full custody of your 7 minor children? Yes, Your Honor. I've reviewed the statements gathered by Mr. Green. They paint a disturbing picture of your marriage. The judge leaned forward. Before we proceed, I need to ask you something. Your husband has escaped custody and is currently at large. If I grant this divorce and award you custody, you understand that he may not accept that decision. Rose's hands trembled in her lap. I understand, Your Honor. And you're prepared to face the consequences. Rose thought about the past 12 years. The beatings, the fear, the children who'd learned to hide when their father came home, the son she'd buried because of Silas's temper. I've been facing consequences my whole life, Your Honor. At least now they'll be for something I chose. The judge studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Very well. Mr. Green, you may present your case. The testimony took hours. Witness after witness came forward. The doctor, the neighbor, The maid, Agnes Thornton, even Deputy Miller, who testified about Silas's threats when he'd been arrested. And then it was Rose's turn. She stood on shaking legs and walked to the front of the courtroom. She could feel every eye on her, could feel the weight of what she was about to do pressing down on her shoulders. "Mrs. Whitfield," Mr. Green's voice was gentle. "Can you tell the court about your marriage?" Rose took a breath, and she told them everything. The first time Silas had hit her 3 months after the wedding when she'd burned dinner. The way he'd apologized after promised it would never happen again. The way she'd believed him because she wanted so desperately for her marriage to work. The escalation, the broken bones, the nights she'd locked herself in the root cellar with the children praying he'd pass out before he found them. Thomas, her beautiful boy who'd just wanted his father's love, who'd been thrown like a rag doll for crying too loudly. The courtroom was silent. Rose could see tears on some faces, horror on others. A few men shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her eyes. "And the scars?" Mr. Green asked quietly. "Are you willing to show the court?" Rose's fingers moved to her collar. For a moment she hesitated. This was the hardest part, the most vulnerable. Then she thought of her children watching from the gallery. Thought of what she was teaching them by standing here, by speaking her truth. "Yes," she said. She unbuttoned her collar and let it fall aside. The gasp that went through the courtroom was audible. Even the judge, a man who'd surely seen his share of violence, went pale. "These are from 12 years of marriage to Silas Whitfield." Rose's voice didn't waver. "Every scar has a story. Every mark is proof of what he did to me. And I have more. On my back, on my arms, on my legs. Places where the bruises wouldn't show." "Thank you, Mrs. Whitfield." Mr. Green's voice was thick. "You may step down." Rose buttoned her collar and returned to her seat. Caleb's hand found hers under the table, squeezing tight. "You did good," he whispered. "You did so good." The judge was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke. "I've presided over many cases in my years on the bench, but I have never heard testimony as damning as what I've heard today." His voice shook with barely contained fury. "Silas Whitfield is not just an abusive husband. He is a monster, and no law on this earth should protect a monster." He slammed his gavel down. "I hereby grant Rose Whitfield's petition for divorce on grounds of extreme cruelty. Full custody of all 7 minor children is awarded to the mother. Silas Whitfield is stripped of all parental rights and forbidden from approaching his former wife or children. Should he violate this order, he will be arrested on sight." Rose's breath caught. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I am issuing a warrant for Silas Whitfield's arrest on charges of assault, child endangerment, and suspicion of murder in the death of Thomas Whitfield. Any citizen who aids in his capture will receive the full protection of this court." The gavel came down again. "Court is adjourned." For a moment Rose couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't believe what had just happened. Then Martha threw her arms around her neck. "Mama, you did it. We're free." The other children swarmed her. Ezra was crying something Rose hadn't seen him do in years. The twins were cheering. Sarah was jumping up and down. Even Hope, who didn't understand what was happening, was clapping her little hands. Rose held them all, tears streaming down her face. "We're free," she whispered. "We're really free." But even as she said the words, she felt a chill run down her spine. Silas was still out there, and she knew with terrible certainty that a piece of paper wasn't going to stop him. The celebration was short-lived. As they emerged from the courthouse, the crowd parted, and Rose saw him. Silas, standing at the edge of the square, a rifle in his hands, his eyes fixed on her with murderous intensity. "Rose!" Caleb shoved her behind him, drawing his own gun. But Silas wasn't aiming at her. He was aiming at the children. "You think a piece of paper changes anything?" His voice carried across the square. "Those are my children, my property, and I'm not leaving here without them." People screamed, scattered. Mothers grabbed their children and ran. But Rose couldn't run. Her children were behind her, frozen with terror. "Let them go, Whitfield." Caleb's voice was deadly calm. "This is between you and me." "No, it's between me and my wife." Silas's aim shifted to Caleb. "You're just the fool who got in the way. I'm the fool who's going to put you down if you don't drop that rifle. You think you can draw faster than I can pull a trigger?" Silas laughed. "I spent 20 years in mining camps. I've killed men before. You're just a broken-down rancher playing hero." "And you're a coward who beats women and children." Caleb's voice dripped contempt. "Only thing smaller than you is your courage." Silas's face twisted with rage. His finger tightened on the trigger. And Rose made a choice. She stepped out from behind Caleb, putting herself directly in Silas's line of fire. "Rose, no. Mama." But she didn't stop, didn't waver. She walked toward her husband with steady steps, her eyes locked on his. "You want me, Silas? Here I am. Get back behind Morrison." "No." Rose kept walking. "I'm done hiding. I'm done being afraid. You want to shoot me? Then shoot me. But you look me in the eyes when you do it." Silas's hands trembled on the rifle. "You think I won't? I think you're a coward." Rose stopped 10 feet away from him. "I think you've been terrorizing women and children your whole life because you're too weak to face anyone who might fight back. And I think deep down you know you're nothing." "Shut up." "Make me." Rose's voice was ice. "Pull that trigger and make me shut up. But know this, if you kill me, you'll have killed the only person who ever tried to love you. And you'll spend the rest of your miserable life knowing you destroyed something beautiful because you were too broken to deserve it." Silas's eyes glistened. For one impossible moment, Rose thought she saw something human in them. Then the mask slammed back into place. "You never loved me. No one ever loved me." "That's not true." Rose's voice softened. "I loved who I thought you were. I loved the man who promised me a good life. That man might have been a lie, but my love wasn't." The rifle wavered. "It's over, Silas. You've lost. The law knows what you did. The whole territory knows. There's nowhere left to run, no one left to believe your lies. You can kill me and spend the rest of your life in prison. Or you can put down that gun and walk away." "Walk away to what? That's not my problem anymore." Rose's jaw set. "I'm done trying to save you. I'm done sacrificing my children's happiness for your sickness. Whatever happens to you now is your own doing." Silas stared at her. The rifle slowly lowered. "You really don't love me anymore?" "No." Rose's voice was gentle but final. "I don't." Something broke in Silas's eyes. The rage drained away, leaving something empty and hollow behind. "Then there's nothing left." He raised the rifle, not at Rose, at himself. "Silas, no!" The shot echoed across the square, but it didn't come from Silas's gun. Sheriff Cross stood 20 feet away, smoke rising from his pistol. Silas crumpled to the ground, the rifle falling from his nerveless fingers. Rose didn't move. Couldn't move. She stood there, staring at the man who'd tormented her for 12 years, watching the blood pool beneath him. "Rose." Caleb's arms wrapped around her from behind. "Rose, it's over. It's over." "Is he?" "He's dead." Sheriff Cross holstered his gun, his face grim. "Saw him raising that rifle. Couldn't take the chance he'd change his mind about who to aim at." Rose's legs gave out. Caleb caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her like she weighed nothing. She buried her face in his chest and wept. It was over. After 12 years of terror, 12 years of pain, 12 years of living in constant fear, it was finally over. Her children swarmed around them, small hands touching her, small voices calling her name, small bodies pressing close. "Mama! Mama! Are you okay?" Rose lifted her head, looked at her children through tear-blurred eyes. "I'm okay." she whispered. I'm okay, babies. We're all okay. And for the first time in her life, she meant it. The days after Silas's death blurred together. Rose moved through them like a woman walking underwater. She fed the children. She answered questions. She signed papers. But inside she felt hollow, scraped clean of everything she'd been carrying for so long. Mama! Martha's voice pulled her back to the present. Are you all right? Rose looked at her daughter, this 10-year-old, who'd shouldered burdens no child should carry, and tried to smile. I don't know, sweetheart. I think I'm still figuring that out. Is it because Pa's dead? The question was so direct, so unflinching. Martha had never been one to dance around hard truths. Partly. Rose pulled her daughter close. I thought I'd feel relieved when he was gone, and I do, but I also feel sad? Maybe. Or maybe just empty, like I've been fighting so long I've forgotten how to do anything else. Martha was quiet for a moment. I'm not sad, she said finally. I know I'm supposed to be. He was my father, but all I feel is grateful. Grateful that he can't hurt you anymore. Grateful that the little ones don't have to be scared. She looked up at Rose with those two old eyes. Does that make me a bad person? Rose's heart cracked. No, baby. That makes you a survivor. The funeral was small. Rose hadn't wanted one at all, but the church insisted. A man deserved to be buried proper, the minister said, regardless of what he'd done in life. So they gathered at the small cemetery on the edge of town, and the minister said words Rose barely heard. Caleb stood beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. The children clustered behind them, silent and solemn. When it was over, Rose stood at the grave and felt nothing. You're supposed to be crying, Ezra said quietly. People are watching. Let them watch. Rose's voice was steady. I'm done performing for anyone. Ezra studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Good. They walked back to the wagon together, leaving Silas Whitfield in the ground where he belonged. The first week was the hardest. Hope had nightmares every night, screaming for her mama in the darkness. Sarah wouldn't let Rose out of her sight. The twins stopped talking altogether, communicating only with each other in their strange twin language. Samuel buried himself in books, barely emerging for meals. Martha took over the kitchen with a fierce efficiency that worried Rose more than it comforted her. And Ezra watched everything with those hawk eyes, waiting for the next threat. They're scared, Caleb said one evening, finding Rose on the porch. They don't know how to live without fear. Neither do I. Rose wrapped her arms around herself. I keep waiting for something bad to happen. Keep listening for his footsteps. Keep bracing for... Her voice broke. I don't know how to stop. Caleb moved to stand beside her. You don't stop all at once. You stop a little bit at a time. One day you realize you slept through the night without a nightmare. One day you laugh without looking over your shoulder. One day you wake up and the first thing you think about isn't him. When does that day come? Different for everyone. Caleb's eyes were distant. For me, it took almost 5 years before I could think about Clara without feeling like I was dying. But it got easier. Slowly. Painfully. But easier. 5 years. Rose shook her head. I don't know if I can survive 5 years of this. You survived 12 years with him. You can survive anything. She looked at him. Then this man who'd risked everything for her and her children. This man who'd given them shelter when they had nothing. This man who'd stood between them and a monster without hesitation. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. Caleb's voice was firm. I just made it a little easier. A little? Rose almost laughed. Caleb, you saved our lives. No. He turned to face her fully. You saved your own lives. You made the choice to leave. You walked through that blizzard. You faced him in that courtroom. I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it. Rose's eyes filled with tears. Why do you always do that? Do what? Make everything about me. Give me credit for things you did." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Because you need to know your own strength," he said finally. "Because you spent 12 years being told you were weak and worthless. Because I want you to understand that you are the hero of your own story, Rose. Not me, you." She stared at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I love you." The words came out before she could stop them, before she could wonder if it was too soon, or too much, or too overwhelming. Caleb's expression softened. "I love you too." "I'm broken." Rose's voice cracked. "I'm damaged and scared, and I don't know if I'll ever be whole again. I don't know if I can give you what you deserve." "What I deserve?" Caleb stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. "Rose, I've spent 6 years believing I didn't deserve anything, believing I was supposed to suffer alone until I died. Then you showed up with your 7 children and your fierce heart and your refusal to give up, and you showed me something different." "What?" "That broken people can still love, that damaged hearts can still beat, that maybe, just maybe, we deserve to be happy." Rose covered his hands with hers. "Do you really believe that?" "I'm starting to." His thumbs brushed away her tears. "And I'm hoping you'll help me keep believing it." She rose on her toes and kissed him. It was different from their first kiss, less desperate, more tender. A promise rather than a question. A beginning rather than an escape. When they finally pulled apart, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me." Rose's breath caught. "What?" "Marry me. Not because you need protection or shelter or a father for your children. Marry me because you want to. Because you choose me." "Caleb, I know it's too soon. I know you just lost your husband. I know this is crazy and impulsive and probably a terrible idea." His voice was rough. "But I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of being alone. And I'm tired of pretending that what I feel for you is anything less than forever." Rose looked into his eyes. Those gray eyes that had seen too much pain and carried too much grief, and saw her future reflected there. "Yes." Caleb blinked. "Yes? Yes, I'll marry you." Rose laughed through her tears. "You're right, it's too soon and probably crazy. But I don't care. I've spent 12 years being careful, and all it got me was misery. I want to be happy. I want my children to be happy. And I think I believe we can be happy together." Caleb's face transformed. The grief and weariness that had lived there for so long melted away, replaced by something radiant. "You mean it?" "I mean it." He lifted her off her feet and spun her around, and Rose laughed. Really laughed for the first time in years. "What's happening?" Sarah's voice came from the doorway. "Mama, why are you spinning?" Rose looked at her daughter, then at the other children crowding behind her in the doorway. "Come here, babies, all of you. We have something to tell you." They gathered around 7 pairs of eyes looking up at her with confusion and hope. "Mr. Morris and Caleb asked me to marry him." Rose gripped Caleb's hand. "And I said yes." Silence. Then Samuel spoke. "Does that mean he's going to be our father?" Rose looked at Caleb, suddenly uncertain. They hadn't discussed this part. But Caleb knelt down so he was at the children's eye level. "That depends on you," he said quietly. "I'm not trying to replace your pa. I know things with him were complicated. But if you'll have me, I'd like to be part of your family. Not as someone who tells you what to do or controls your lives, just as someone who loves you and wants to keep you safe." The twins exchanged one of their wordless glances. "You already keep us safe," Daniel said. "And you make Mama smile," David added. "And you teach me about horses," Ezra chimed in. "And you let me cook whatever I want," Martha said. "And you read me stories," Sarah piped up. "And you hold me when I'm scared," Hope lisped, reaching up for Caleb. He lifted her into his arms, his eyes suspiciously bright. "So is that a yes?" "It's a yes," Ezra said firmly. "For all of us." But we have conditions, Martha added, and Rose's heart swelled with pride at her daughter's negotiating spirit. Name them. You have to promise never to hit Mama, or us. I promise. Caleb's voice was solemn. I will never raise my hand against any of you. And you have to promise to stay, Samuel said quietly. Even when things get hard, even when we're difficult, you have to promise not to leave. Caleb looked at Rose, then back at the children. I promise, I'm not going anywhere. Ever. And Sarah's voice was tiny but fierce. You have to promise to love us forever and ever. Caleb pulled the little girl into his arms alongside Hope. That's the easiest promise of all. I already do. The wedding was planned for spring. But as the weeks passed, Rose found she couldn't wait that long. I don't need a fancy ceremony, she told Agnes one afternoon while the older woman was helping her select fabric for a wedding dress. I just need him, and the children, and someone to make it legal. Agnes studied her with knowing eyes. You're sure most women dream of their wedding day. I dreamed of my first wedding day. Rose's voice was quiet. It was beautiful. Perfect flowers. Perfect dress. Perfect everything. And then I spent 12 years in hell. She ran her fingers over a simple cotton fabric. This time I don't want perfect. I want real. I want a dress I can actually work in. I want my children standing beside me. I want to say my vows and mean them, really mean them, without wondering what darkness is hiding behind my husband's smile. Agnes was quiet for a long moment. You've changed, she finally said. From that frightened woman I first heard about hiding in a rancher's barn with 7 hungry children. You've become someone else entirely. I've become myself. Rose met the older woman's eyes. I've become the person I was always meant to be before Silas beat it out of me. 2 weeks later, they stood in Caleb's living room, the room that had become their living room, and said their vows. Judge Morrison officiated. Agnes and Mr. Green served as witnesses, and all 7 children stood in a half-circle around them, cleaned up and solemn for the occasion. Do you, Caleb Morrison, take Rose Whitfield to be your lawfully wedded wife? Caleb's eyes never left Rose's face. I do. And do you, Rose Whitfield, take Caleb Morrison to be your lawfully wedded husband? Rose thought about the first time she'd said those words, 18 years old and full of hope. She'd meant them then, too. Had believed with all her heart that she was starting a beautiful life. She'd been wrong. But this time was different. This time she knew exactly what she was getting. This time she was choosing with open eyes and a full heart. I do. The judge smiled. Then by the power vested in me by the Montana Territory, I now pronounce you husband and wife. He looked at Caleb. You may kiss your bride. Caleb cupped Rose's face in his hands and kissed her gently, reverently, like she was something precious. The children erupted in cheers. Does this mean we're Morrisons now? Samuel asked when the chaos settled. Rose looked at Caleb, who shrugged. If you want to be. I want to be, Sarah said immediately. Sarah Morrison. That sounds pretty. Hope Morrison, the toddler echoed, not quite understanding, but wanting to be included. One by one, the other children chimed in. Even Ezra, who'd been the most reserved about the whole thing, finally nodded. Ezra Morrison. I guess it doesn't sound too bad. Rose felt tears prick her eyes. You don't have to change your names. You can keep Whitfield if you want. No. Martha's voice was firm. That name belongs to the bad times. We want to start fresh. Morrison it is then. Caleb's voice was rough with emotion. All 9 of us. That night after the children were in bed, Rose found Caleb sitting in the kitchen staring at the fire. Having second thoughts. He looked up startled, then smiled. No, just overwhelmed. 6 years ago I came home to an empty house and 2 graves. Now I have a wife and 7 children. It's a lot to take in. Rose sat down across from him. Too much. Never. He reached across the table and took her hand. Just different. Good different. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I keep waiting to wake up. Me too. Rose squeezed his hand. I keep thinking this is all a dream, that I'll open my eyes and I'll be back in that house in Kansas, and Silas will be standing over me and... Hey! Caleb was around the table in an instant, pulling her into his arms. That's over. He's gone. He can never hurt you again. I know that in my head. But my body... Rose shuddered. My body still remembers, still tenses when I hear footsteps, still flinches when someone raises their voice. That'll fade, in time. What if it doesn't? What if I'm broken forever? Caleb pulled back to look at her. Then I'll love you broken. I'll love you scared. I'll love you flinching and tense and fighting old ghosts. His voice was fierce. I didn't marry you because you were perfect, Rose. I married you because you're real, because you survived, because you're the strongest person I've ever known. Rose's throat closed up. I don't feel strong. Then I'll feel it for you, until you can feel it for yourself. She buried her face in his chest, and cried not from grief this time, but from relief. From the overwhelming sensation of being loved unconditionally for the first time in her life. The months that followed were a revelation. Spring came, and with it, new life. The ranch expanded as Caleb took on more horses. The children threw themselves into their new existence with an enthusiasm that made Rose's heart ache with joy. Ezra became Caleb's shadow, learning everything there was to know about ranching. At 13, he was already talking about building his own spread someday. Martha discovered a talent for growing things and turned a bare patch of ground behind the house into a flourishing vegetable garden. Samuel devoured every book Caleb could find for him and started writing his own stories, tales of cowboys and outlaws and heroes who protected the innocent. The twins came out of their shell, their strange silence replaced by constant chatter and laughter. They fought and played and made mischief like normal children, and Rose treasured every chaotic moment. Sarah appointed herself Hope's personal guardian, teaching her younger sister words and songs, and how to catch butterflies without hurting them. And Hope, little Hope, who'd been so close to death that first night, bloomed into a healthy, happy toddler who followed Caleb everywhere and called him Papa. They all called him Papa eventually. Even Ezra, though he pretended not to when anyone was listening. Summer brought heat and hard work, but also lazy afternoons by the creek and family picnics in the meadow. Fall brought harvest and preparation for winter, the whole family working together to stock the larder and repair the barn. And then one crisp November morning, exactly 1 year after Rose had collapsed on that frozen trail, she woke to find Caleb already dressed and waiting. Come with me. Where? You'll see. He led her out to the place where they'd first met, that stretch of trail where her life had changed forever. Why are we here? Caleb took both her hands in his. 1 year ago today, a woman begged me to feed her children. She was starving, exhausted, terrified. She'd walked through a blizzard to save her family. She'd given up everything she had just to get them away from a monster. Rose's eyes filled with tears. Caleb. Let me finish. His grip tightened. That woman collapsed at my horse's feet, and I thought, God help me. I thought about riding away, about pretending I hadn't seen her, about protecting my own pain instead of helping with hers. But you didn't. No, I didn't. And that decision, that one moment of choosing to stop instead of ride past, changed everything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. I made this, for you. It was a ring. Simple, wooden, carved from the same tree that stood near their house. I know it's not gold or silver. I know it's not what you deserve. But I wanted you to have something that came from here, from this land, from the home we've built together. Rose took the ring with trembling fingers. It's beautiful. It's a promise. Caleb's voice was thick. A promise that I will never stop choosing you. Never stop choosing our family. Never stop being grateful for the day you stumbled into my life and saved me. Saved you. Rose looked up at him through her tears. Caleb, you saved us. We saved each other. He slipped the ring onto her finger. That's what families do. Rose threw her arms around his neck and held on like she'd never let go. I love you. I love you too. Caleb's arms tightened around her, more than I ever thought I could love anyone again. They stood there on that frozen trail holding each other, while the winter wind swirled around them, and Rose finally understood what it meant to come home. That evening, gathered around the table with her family, all 9 of them, Rose looked at each face and felt her heart overflow. Ezra, serious and strong, arguing with Caleb about the best way to train a horse. Martha, beautiful and capable, serving the meal she'd cooked herself. Samuel, nose buried in a book, even at the dinner table, lost in another world. The twins bickering and laughing, and stealing food off each other's plates. Sarah chattering about the butterfly she'd caught and released. Hope sitting in Caleb's lap, her small hands reaching for his beard. And Caleb himself, this man who'd opened his door to strangers and ended up with a family. Mama. Sarah's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Why are you crying? Rose touched her cheek and found it wet. Happy tears, sweetheart. Just happy tears. You cry when you're happy now. Sometimes, when you're happier than you ever thought possible. Sarah considered this. I'm happy too. Can I cry? Rose laughed a full, free sound that she'd once thought she'd never make again. You can do whatever you want, baby. That's what freedom means. Freedom. Sarah tried out the word. I like that. Me too. Rose looked at Caleb over her daughter's head. Me too. After the children were asleep, Rose and Caleb sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one. I used to hate nights, Rose said quietly. They meant he was coming home. Meant I had to be perfect. Had to have everything ready. Had to brace for whatever mood he was in. And now nights mean peace. Safety. You. Caleb pulled her closer. I used to dread mornings. Waking up to an empty house. Another day of going through the motions. Another day of pretending I was living when I was really just waiting to die. And now? Now mornings mean 7 children who need breakfast. A wife who steals all the blankets. A life that's messy and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Rose laughed softly. I don't steal the blankets. You absolutely do. Fine, maybe a little. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their breath fog in the cold air. Rose. Thank you. She turned to look at him. For what? For collapsing on that trail. For begging me to feed your children. For being brave enough to trust a stranger when you had every reason not to. Rose reached up and touched his face. Thank you for stopping. For opening your door. For loving us when you had nothing left to give. Caleb caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. I think we were meant to find each other. 2 broken people who somehow fit together. You believe in fate. I didn't used to. His eyes met hers. Now I'm not so sure. Rose smiled. Then let's call it a miracle. A frozen, desperate, impossible miracle. I can live with that. They kissed under the stars, 2 people who'd walked through fire and come out the other side holding hands. And in that moment, Rose knew with absolute certainty that everything she'd suffered, every beating, every tear, every moment of despair had led her here. To this man. To this family. To this life. It wasn't what she'd planned. It wasn't what she'd expected. It was better. The next morning, Rose woke to chaos. Hope had climbed into bed with them sometime during the night and was currently bouncing on Caleb's stomach. The twins were fighting in the hallway. Martha was yelling at Samuel to get out of bed, and somewhere in the house, Sarah was singing at the top of her lungs. Good morning. Caleb's voice was muffled, his face half buried in the pillow. Good morning. Rose smiled at the mayhem around them. "Welcome to family life." "Wouldn't have it any other way." He caught her hand and squeezed. And Rose squeezed back. Because this was what she'd walked through a blizzard for. What she'd risked everything for. What she'd nearly died for. Not just survival. Life. Real, messy, beautiful, chaotic life. She got out of bed, scooped Hope into her arms, and went to face the day. Her day. Her family. Her future. And for the first time since she was 18 years old, Rose Morrison knew exactly who she was and exactly what she wanted. She wanted this. All of it. Forever. And as she walked into the kitchen where her children were arguing and laughing and making a glorious mess of everything, she smiled. Because a year ago she'd begged a stranger to feed her children. And he'd given her so much more than food. He'd given her hope, given her love, given her a home, given her everything she'd ever wanted and never believed she could have. And that was the greatest miracle of all. Not that she'd survived, but that she'd learned to live again. She'd been broken, battered, beaten down until she barely recognized herself. But she'd gotten up, kept walking, kept fighting, and in the end, she'd found exactly where she belonged, in a small ranch house in Montana, with a man who loved her, and 7 children who needed her, and a future that stretched out before them bright and open and full of possibility. That was her story. Not a tale of tragedy and despair. A story of survival, redemption, and the fierce, unstoppable power of a mother's love. And it was only just beginning.